Let's move on and talk about a couple of stories in the news today. Poll out today shows the Quebec Liberals and the Parti Québécois at a dead heat atop the poll at 30%. But of course, when you break it down, what's important is not that. It's the regions where the Liberals kind of seem to be stuck in neutral.
Sure. And this is the way it works in Quebec politics, right? So there's the concentrated vote for the Liberals. They always have to be able to compete off the island, and how much of a dent can they make in the Francophone vote, or how diluted is the vote so that it gets, the Francophone vote gets spread between a bunch of people. And so I think there's one weird little hope maybe for the Liberals, and that is, I shouldn't say it that way. I mean, they're tied in the polls for Pete's sake, and they were dead on arrival not so long ago. But if Frechette continues to give CAQ a little bit of momentum, then that's a real hope, because she will hopefully take some votes away from the from the Francophone communities, and that bleeds the PQ. So it's her rally. This is what I've always said about the CAQ, right? Like, they can't win the next election, but they could spoil it for somebody.
Right.
So I'll be watching to see how that goes.
It's interesting. I was talking about this earlier in the day with someone saying, here we are, 30 some odd years later, 31 years later, and the vote in Quebec will, it appears, come down to not the economy, not law and order, not language. Guess what? It's coming down to a vote on referendum or separation all over again.
Well, if it does that, then the Peckies are cooked, because I don't really think the province is in a mood to pursue that. And I think that's a great vulnerability for the PQ. So they've got to figure out a way to say, no, it's time for a change. We're still the best agent of change. And it's not just about a referendum. And I think it's going to be a complicated campaign. And we're still in the phony war campaign, right? Like, we haven't actually seen the daily grind of 3 events a day, people being on television every day, having lots of opportunity to screw up and make a mistake. And so I think, there's that fire test. I will say, I think Frechette is appealing, because to the degree to which what people are looking for is change, she's obviously not Legault, right? Like, I don't know, she's a familiar face, but suddenly she's center stage, and she's not the same, right? She's not the same as Legault, and so that draws a measure away from the pure change vote, which I think is bad for PQ ultimately.
So I'm curious, as you say that, Scott, do we put that in the same kind of category as Mark Carney was not Justin Trudeau to a party that was about to lose an election, and look what he did?
It would be, I think, reckless of me to make that association, but there's a little bit of that, like where Carney's opponents were saying, no, it's the same old, same old, same old. It's like, yeah, but not the eye test. The eye test tells me that it's different. And I think Frechette, again, the eye test tells you that it's different. Now, I think she's not Carney. And you don't have some of those really unique chemical combinations that happened that allowed Carney to occur. So I wouldn't predict a recurrence. I think the best that Frechette can do is deny someone else a victory. And here's my big smart insight, like any dum-dum couldn't figure this part out. She's either going to deny it for the PQ or for the Liberals. She can't win it herself, but she's
okay.
Definitely the strategy of changing leaders was the right call, because Legault would be at a chemical trace right now.
So the other issue provincially here, I don't know if you've been paying attention to this. Yesterday we had Paul St. Pierre Plamondon come out and say, without any proof whatsoever, that he believes the feds are spying on the PQ. And just to make matters worse, today, the sitting justice minister, Simon Jolin Barrette, doubled down, saying, yes, he believes that's the case and the fears are actually legit. I mean, it seems kind of insane to me, because obviously he said he had no proof, but then to have the justice minister double down, what's going on here as far as you can see?
So I'm going to say 2 things that seem contradictory. On the one hand, this is plainly a desperate play by the PQ, but I think, a smart move. And the reason it's a smart move is the Justice Minister had to say that. Like, if you're CAQ, you can't say, don't be ridiculous, man. It's not 1968. We're not in a world where the RCMP have been unleashed on, on sovereigntists. But it strikes a cultural chord. And so what I think in particular, because the PQ have seen, some unpleasant developments for themselves in the polls. So job number one, when you've seen a bit of a retreat, is rally your base, right? What rallies your base? This feels like a stretch, and it is a stretch. And it obviously has, I think, to be blunt, probably zero integrity to it. But as a political ploy, it is likely to galvanize your base. Yeah, they did it before. They'll do it again. Flip in Ottawa. Plus, if Frechette is not as interesting a villain as they go, then you need to find another opponent. You need to find another villain in your story. Ottawa is always the obvious villain, and particularly for the PQ. So I think there's a political sense there. CAQ, when they say could be, I think that's just insulation, right? The one who's in an awkward spot is Miar, because he can't say, yeah, it must be happening. But if he invests too much political capital in saying this is irresponsible and ridiculous, then he's going to worsen the problem we were talking about earlier, which is outside of Montreal, he just makes himself sound culturally like an unappealing option. So I think it's an interesting political play.
Wow. My reaction was, you have no proof. You have no proof to show. You've admitted you have no proof. And then the Justice Minister, he's the Justice Minister, comes out and says he's buying in with no proof. And the first thing you'd go if you were in court is, show me the proof. Well, I have no proof. But then what are you doing here?
Yeah, but it's not court, man. That's how you know. That's how you know that it's a politically potent play, because the Justice Minister couldn't dismiss it. The CAQ Justice Minister couldn't. A Liberal Justice Minister, if they were the incumbents, would blow it away and say it's ridiculous. And now let's grill you. But in this environment, it galvanizes some of that Péquiste vote. It preys upon fears and cultural tensions from days gone by. It may not be true, but it feels like it could be true. And
well, hold on. Why would you then, as the Justice Minister, you're in the CAQ, why would you give any oxygen to the person you're running against in the PQ?
Because you can't look like, if you're CAQ, you're always straddling this fence. You've always got the pole firmly up your butt, and you can't look like you're dismissing the idea that Ottawa could be against us. You always want to preserve the ability to make that argument. So it was a trap. It was a wedge against CAQ. You know where the Liberals have to go. It was a wedge against CAQ, so that's why they had to try to do this mealy-mouthed kind of, could be, no evidence, might not be. And by the way, it's even more contradictory than that, because the public security minister basically just dismissed it out of hand, almost by reflex. I think the Justice Minister was making the more considered political play, saying, we better treat this thing like the grenade that it is.
Wow. I will point out, by the way, I don't know if you heard Alexandre Boularice, right, who's going to be running provincially here now, alluded to the mental health of Ponce Pierre Plamondon and said, quote, whatever it is, I'm sure it can be treated.
Yeah, I didn't even get I don't understand it. Not a smart play, right? You're moving back into the provincial, or moving into the provincial arena. You always have to worry a little bit whether you got some of that Ottawa stink on you, and then you say something that feels a little bit discordant. And as jokes go, it's not very good, man. Okay. Get a new joke writer.
Scott Reid joins us every Wednesday afternoon. Scott, thanks so much.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Bryan Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.